Now, I gotta say, I do actually kind of care about this story, but not enough. But due to popular demand, let's talk about the college admission scandal and the escalation of insanity that's carried out, because we got a ton of stories. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read all of them, but first, Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman sued for $500 billion in college cheating scam. Now, my understanding is that there's a class action lawsuit forming. I don't know if it's specifically this one. Here we go. A U.S. mother has filed a $500 billion lawsuit against the people charged in a university admission scandal, claiming her son was unfairly denied placement. Because you have to realize, those that are spending money to cheat their way in the system are taking the places of other, of people who should be in the school. But my God, I have so many stories. Then we have this one. Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin are among a dozen charged, and this is the original story. I pulled this up just for a reference in case, but let's move on. Because Sephora and Tresemme have dropped YouTuber and influencer Olivia Jade amid the college admissions cheating scandal. Lori Loughlin's daughter had enthusiastically announced her makeup collaboration in YouTube vlog posted just 4 months ago. I don't blame her necessarily, but I have to say, to those that are watching, someone who grew up lower class or, lower middle class, I don't know exactly where it was. My family wasn't rich. We were poor. We lost our home. I ended up homeless when I was like 18 or 19 for short periods of time. I look at people like this with complete and utter disdain. And it's not just her. It's not just these families that were cheating. There was an interesting point brought up. I can't remember the guy's name, but he said the fact that they were wealthy and advantaged wasn't enough for them. They didn't want to just be a normal rich person. They wanted bespoke, services. So they cheated to get their kids in these schools. These are people, these young people, and it's not just, I don't mean to focus my ire at this individual here, but they're wealthy, white progressive types. The reason I bring up white is because it's, they try to use the rhetoric of race to claim they're morally superior. And again, I'm not referring it to her. I'm just talking about this upper class of individuals that haven't experienced strife, who feel like they're better. And one of the big challenges in the politics of today is that many people on what is now becoming the mainstream right, the mainstream left, the identitarian left, look at her and say white privilege. And I look at her and say she's rich. And that used to be the narrative. It used to be that you would point to these people who are extremely wealthy and privileged, who still cheat, and it's probably their willingness to cheat that helps them get ahead, and say there is more than one world that, and I mean this in the figurative sense, that we all live in kind of different bubbles and different realities. If you're poor, if you grew up the kind like I did, and you got in trouble, what could you do? With law enforcement, you would hope a public defender could take care of you. You'd hope that you could post bail. You can't. But these super rich people have the $1 million they need to get out. And so, what I end up seeing with these super rich people and the current trend in politics is kind of an excuse made for the truly wealthy, because now what they've done is two things. And again, this is not necessarily reflecting in Lori Loughlin or Felicity Huffman. I don't know if they're politically active to this degree, but you end up with high profile, extremely wealthy white people who deflect the criticisms of their wealth and their willingness to cheat because they're woke. You end up with individuals who are extremely wealthy, ill-tempered, and mean, but aren't white, who get away with bad behavior and claim they're oppressed, even though some of the richest people in the world are not white. They use that rhetoric to escape the issue. But I guess what we should do is start with actually just reading the story about the current lawsuit. Jennifer K. Toy cited the despicable actions of the alleged conspirators as the reason her child was not admitted to some universities he had applied to. A separate class action suit brought by current students has been filed against the universities named by U.S. officials. The students say a warped and rigged admission scandal cost them money. Actresses Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin are among the 33 parents charged with conspiring to bribe, cheat on tests, and fake credentials to get their students into elite universities. On Thursday, Ms. Loughlin was officially dropped from the Hallmark Channel, a television network she has worked at since at least 2010. In her filing to a San Francisco court on Wednesday, Ms. Toy said that her son Joshua applied to some of the schools mentioned in the U.S. Department of Justice complaint, but did not make the cut for some undisclosed reason. I am now outraged and hurt because I feel that my son, my only child, was denied access to a college, not because he failed to work and study hard enough, but because wealthy individuals felt it was okay to lie, cheat, steal, and bribe their children's way into a good college. And it's also important to point out that I think it was this young woman, Olivia Jade, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, where she said something to the effect of, I just don't care about school. These are people who simply because they're rich are able to continue being rich. And I get it, it's marketing, it works, and there are people who support it. But one thing that people in this country need to understand, especially, like, I don't even know where to point this criticism at anymore because the left has become, race-based and identitarian. But when you're poor and you're growing up and struggling and you know you have a plan, you have ideas, and you want to solve some problems, and then you look at these individuals who are just rich for the sake of being rich, who are famous because they're famous, they inherited this wealth, there is a resentment there, especially when they take from you. And I don't mean necessarily like they've robbed you specifically, but when you feel like these people have cheated the system in a way that has kept you out. Now, here's the thing. To a certain extent, I can understand that when it comes to wealth. Wealth is quantifiable. That's why I was a fan of Bernie Sanders. When he talks about, to an extent, taxing the rich, I understand there's really complicated issues here, but I understand the sentiment of why wealth inequality can lead to destabilizing economies. However, over the past several years, racist weirdos and racism has permeated the left and switched the narrative to, instead of talking about quantifiable wealth and how families like, these families used their quantifiable wealth to get ahead, they talk about race, something that is not quantifiable. Sure, I can look at someone and tell if they're white, but you can't tell what they're worth. You can't tell if they're good or bad people. And that's the narrative now. They use this rhetoric to make it about race to excuse the bad behavior of certain wealthy individuals. They get away with it because now all you have to do is say the right words and they will not target you anymore. There is a conspiracy theory among many people that the shift was on purpose. During Occupy Wall Street, there was a big push for class war, right? You had a lot of activists on the far left, socialists, saying these rich people are cheating to get ahead. And we can see that many of them do. Absolutely. There are certainly many people who have earned their way to the top, who have earned their wealth. But this was the sentiment. All of a sudden, something changed during Occupy Wall Street. The rhetoric from the activists began to be about privilege and class and the progressive stack. And that if you were white, that was truly your wealth. And that if you were white, you didn't understand. But that's wrong. That rhetoric has become pervasive and it started to take over. But here we can see that it really is about class. And I don't know what the solution is. I certainly think there should be a mixed economy and people should be allowed to succeed if they're talented. And that certainly means there will be some people who've, I don't know how Lori Loughlin became wealthy, but her kids certainly, they say she rose to fame as her role as Aunt Becky on 1987 sitcom Full House and the reboot Fuller House. She's been dropped from the Hallmark Channel. Her kids will never understand that struggle to become wealthy. They're just inherently wealthy and they're not going to see that. And that's fine. I think ultimately that's bad. I think it's bad for your kids if they grow up this way because they won't understand true strife and they won't understand the real world. They'll be able to run businesses, but they start at a certain level where they can't really experience hardship. But I guess that's a ramification of the system, and I understand that happens. But then what we're seeing today, there's actually no solution to dealing with inequality and people who cheat the system. Sure, they're suing. Maybe that will lead to something. She gets dropped from her sponsors. There are some real world ramifications for the cheating. But you have to also realize, as much as we're hearing about this cheating now, there are still tons and tons of uber wealthy elites who get away with this. And I want to make one more point on this. There are many people in this country who lost their jobs. These people were either, laid off due to their companies moving overseas, automation. Many of these people voted for Donald Trump. When they did, those who try to defend the actions of these ultra elite, born wealthy people deflected the issue, made it about race, and they actually demonized those who lost their jobs and were suffering, who turned to opiates to deal with the pain they were feeling because, there was one video I saw of a man crying when his factory came back because of Donald Trump's policies, and he was like, praising Trump. They would blame the poor. And that's what's truly terrifying about the race-based rhetoric and identitarianism we're seeing on the left. Instead of dealing with the issue of massive companies moving overseas to save a few bucks to make the rich get richer, they say, no, the real issue is white people. And then those who are truly the victims of this globalist wealthy policy and those who would cheat, the real victims are being demonized as the problem. And it's really fascinating to me that you often see people on the left say the right is trying to trick poor people into blaming other poor people. And I'm like, but so are you. You know, when you blame Trump supporters for the hardship they're facing and for what happens with Trump, it's because they're suffering. They've lost their jobs. They need help. Trump wanted to bring the factories back. And what does the regressive identitarian left say? They say, oh, but they're white, so they're privileged. I've had people tell me that my friends in Eastern Europe who are relatively poor are better off because they're white than actual middle-class minorities in the United States, and it blows my mind. But I don't know. That was just a rant. I didn't get too much into the actual issue of, what's going on with him, but we'll leave it there. They're in a lawsuit. I got a couple more videos coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you then.